if you're passionate about something, consider doing this early on in your career. Where I actually started off my career at the Boston Consulting Group, and then compared to a lot of other people that I'm actually speaking with, they're saying, wow, you actually had made this choice to actually be impact focused early on in your career. And I think that's true. And I can only encourage people to say, like, well, just if you have skills, why not try use that for something that actually has lots of, starting a startup or creating the impact you can have.
I'm Shannon Lucas.
And I'm Tracy Lovejoy, and we're the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to catalyzing innate change makers to accelerate positive change.
This is our podcast,
Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out,
where we highlight catalysts that are creating amazing change in the world. And I'm so excited today to have time to reconnect with Bernhard Kowatsch. He's the head of the Innovation Accelerator of the United Nations World Food Program, which he created in 2015. The accelerator has been awarded Best Workplace for Innovators in 2021 and 2020 by Fast Company. He was also one of 4 finalists for Fast Company's Innovative Leader of the Year in 2020. He is absolutely crushing it. It's been so fun to watch his journey. The accelerator has supported more than 100 innovations with funding, runs a total of 18 SDG accelerator programs for external partners such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And previous to that, the buildup at WFP, he created their internal management consulting program at WFP after having worked at the Boston Consulting Group. I had to add that he has 3 masters under his belt. We are so thrilled to have you here today, Bernhard.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and great to catch up and actually speak about how to make, great innovation happen.
And we're so thrilled because I know you have so much wisdom. You've absolutely been crushing it. But let's start with, how do you relate to the concept of catalyst?
So for me, it actually doesn't really matter whether you call it a catalyst, a designer, or a creator, but it deeply resonates with me. And actually a lot of the people that I interact with on a daily basis, people who actually create something new, people who go with the full steam, whatever comes their way. And it's something that is really, really important. Either if you're a startup founder or you're actually inside of a corporation and you want to make change happen. I think that this concept of it's uncomfortable, and at the same time you can create something that's so meaningful and so impactful. I think that is actually very, very important, and really great that you captured that.
Thank you. And I heard you mention earlier about how you sort of have one speed, full steam ahead, and you like hard work. Is that part of that definition for you?
So I have to say, this is something that I realized some time ago, which is just I do enjoy doing things with impact. And in my current role, that's essentially creating the biggest social impact possible. But this impact theme was always something that was very, very close to my heart. And at the same time, I realized I only want to do things with 100% commitment, full steam ahead. And this is something that is probably deeply personal to me, but it's also something that I enjoy.
Yeah. And my guess is it's not just 100%. Maybe for you, for others, it's probably 150, knowing your track record. But so you've had an amazing journey since you've been at the World Food Program. We'd love to hear about, what you're catalyzing these days, or maybe something from the past that you can share about change that you've created.
So maybe, after starting Share the Meal fundraising app, I got the opportunity to start the World Food Program's Innovation Accelerator. And back in the days, this really was a crazy idea. How can we work with startups, with nonprofit innovations to tackle one of the world's biggest challenges, global hunger? But the basic idea was, why don't we do something what you know from private sector, startup accelerators, venture investments, and use that for some of the global problems. Now, ever since starting in 2015, from the early days when everything seemed small, we started working with entrepreneurs first, then with external startups also. In 2021, we actually positively impacted a total of 9 million people through the portfolio of innovations and startups that we've supported. And as you were saying in the introduction, we're actually now open sourcing all of our activities even, and we are running a total of 18 accelerator programs, coming from this lens of, okay, how can we actually achieve even more impact? Not because we have to, it's more I think there's a gap actually that, what we're seeing right now, working with startups innovation, we can do a lot more.
And I'm super curious, as you started on that journey, I mean, that is a pretty foreign concept for the type of organization that you work for. Like, what were some of the early challenges that you encountered?
So I think, I mean, I'm lucky in that regard, so that the World Food Program actually is innovation minded, and it always has been. Like it is also like, you know, right now the organization reaches about 130 million people in 120 countries and territories. So it's like, you know, whenever you hear the UN delivers food in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, in Venezuela, it's actually the World Food Program. So like you gotta be like creative to a certain extent, like innovative if you want to do that properly. Now the one thing that getting this started really was to prove that this can actually work, and to find those people who are the kind of the natural allies to actually move the concept along. Because of course, like it's very easy to dismiss the idea of saying like, wow, this is just this shiny toys, it's never going to work. And I think not to get distracted by the people who are not supportive of it, but like working with those who believe in that, I think that was one of the key like challenges, but like also success factors.
And how did you prove, I totally get ignoring like the second half of the diffusion curve of innovation. That's my advice for people when they're starting out, like start with the standard deviation right next to the catalyst standard deviation. But how did you prove like incrementally, I'm guessing that's how it had to happen, but maybe not incrementally, the possibility of impact of your approach, this entrepreneurial approach?
So I think part of this is we're working with startups as an accelerator. So we always had this in our minds that we actually take the same approach to ourselves. So like early on, like everything that we're doing, like using human-centered design, lean startup thinking for everything that we are doing as well, right? So like keep on pushing, constantly learning and improving, and like trying to keep that mindset of like, you know, like not necessarily failure is not necessarily what we want, but we want to learn early and we want to learn from that to actually get better. And like being human-centered, like being people-centered and actually solving problems for somebody and like trying to do that really well. I mean, as simple as that sounds, but that was at the core. And like from that, like every single accelerator program, we improve things. Like we actually like, there's a flip side of that, which is like not reinventing the wheel every single time, of course. But there is definitely this ingrained, like, you know, feeling of like myself and like my whole team that's like, okay, keep on pushing, keep on reinventing, keep on like improving what we're doing. And ultimately that has led to where we are right now.
I'm wondering how the learning mindset, I'll call it, the growth mindset. I mean, it sounds like some of that was already there, but maybe you pushed it a little bit more by saying, we tried something, it didn't quite work. So it's kind of a two-part question. How did you get people to lean into that growth mindset? And did you find a way to systematize the grabbing the learnings from the failures?
Well, so I guess part of this is when we started, like I also like had the, you know, the ability to actually recruit people externally to the organization. So like essentially like in the beginning, like it is still to this day, like everybody who's on my team has either been a startup founder, has worked in an innovation team in a tech company, or they have implemented innovations in developing countries. So like essentially like we're recruiting for mindset, and like everybody has been in this kind of role before. Now, the interesting thing, because we are part of the World Food Program, so we actually work, like our clients, if you want, are like the field offices, like the people who are like on the ground in developing countries. So they have the connections with like the problems like that we're actually trying to solve. And I think part of the secret sauce has been that the field network of the World Food Program, like we have experts in the organization that actually do this. And as accelerator, on the other hand, we have like the innovation, like startup knowledge, product management, like how do you actually move things fast? In having the humility of actually understanding that you actually don't know everything that you need to be successful, I think was probably one of the success factors, as well as in our particular case, we are on purpose called World Food Program Innovation Accelerator and not like, you know, incubator or lab, because we believe in like we are supporting others. So we're a support service to others.
Okay, I have another follow-on question. A lot of people will be mad if I don't ask, which is, so in the interview process, how are you interviewing for growth mindset?
Well, it is interesting. I mean, okay, one of the things is like not wasting time on questions that you actually prepare for, but like actually to try to find like, you know, specific examples and like have different people interview from the team. And it's like you typically find out from like specific like case studies that we're doing in the interview process, like, you know, what are, you know, conceptual skills, what are like the analytical skills, like, you know, to what extent are people able to take accountability or like but then, you know, you also have to actually take in other aspects of like, are you able to communicate what you're doing, which is in the space of, you know, working on innovation, working on creating new things. It's very, very important, because like just creating new stuff, but not being able to articulate yourselves, that's a problem.
100%. It's one of the key skills that we teach in a lot of our courses and when we're working with organizations. Totally. Okay, final question, because I know I need to move on. But the other thing I'm super interested in is, so you've been open sourcing, and I mean, it sounds like from day one, you really considered yourself like an ecosystem convener / some supporter. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that journey and any key lessons for people who are looking at, you know, at driving impact through an ecosystem.
So I guess step one was really like to try to prove the value. And this is also why we started as an accelerator working with intrapreneurs first, like with internal nonprofit innovations, because while we had more control to actually like how to structure the program, we could also like ask them for more forgiveness in like if there's things that didn't go as well, of course. And then trying to prove the program, and like we found out early on like what actually creates the value, what like, and we typically now run like, you know, 1 week training program, which we call Innovation Bootcamp with a pitch event. And then throughout a 6-month program, we provide up to $100,000 of grant funding, support through my team, and then also connections to field offices. Now, I have to say, like getting that right, but actually also not to be discouraged by, you know, like it's different from the initial concept, of course, because like I can only encourage people to like actually be open that by learning and like by deviating from what you initially planned, you actually learn and you create more value by doing that. I think that's probably one of the things. Once that was done, our mindset was really like, how can we maximize the impact? And it wasn't an easy decision to say like, okay, we also run accelerator programs for other global organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or other UN organizations, where of course that means, well, we need more people ourselves. Is that good? Because like it of course is harder to manage a larger team than if you just stay at a smaller team. But we really believe in this kind of, on the one hand, open sourcing everything that we do so that others can really replicate what we're doing. And we're doing this through multiple things. We actually write up like content in like blog posts. We have an annual report and social media. And it's interesting. We rather try to have like this bite-sized information rather to have like the full playbook immediately, because we realize that sometimes there's this misconception. I now have the playbook. Now I'm going to be innovative. And it's not like, it's actually like, it's specific things you need to do. It's actually learning these behaviors, these procedures, like bringing the right people in, and then you can actually do this.
It's so true. There's so much like nuance. You can create the playbook, but there's just so much nuance. We talk a lot about emotional intelligence and emotional labor of Catalyst in terms of engagement and bringing people along and all of that. I'm so excited to see the impact that you continue to create in the world. I'm going to hand it over to Tracy for your rapid fire round.
Bernhard, great catalyst. Like, oh my gosh, I am a little overwhelmed hearing the pace at which you work and the way you go. So I'm guessing you have amazing, amazing advice for the catalysts out there. If you were talking to your 20-year-old self, what actionable nuggets of advice would you give yourself?
So one thing is probably that I would listen carefully to different people that actually give you feedback and also advice in terms of like what you're good at and what you're not good at. The other piece would be like what you enjoy doing and what you're good at ideally are the same things, and ideally you even get paid for it. Now, like sometimes there's a reality of like, you know, maybe you cannot actually do what you really enjoy and like get paid for it also. Like, so there's actually a challenge that people have. But like, I think really for, if I were again, like 20 years old, is just like, you know, I think just also start, if you're passionate about something, consider doing this early on in your career, where, I actually started off my career at the Boston Consulting Group. And then compared to a lot of other people that I'm actually speaking with, they're saying, wow, you actually had made this choice to actually be impact focused early on in your career. And I think that's true. And I can only encourage people to say, like, well, just if you have skills, why not try use that for something that actually has lots of, starting a startup or creating the impact you can have.
Yes, everybody go do that. Like the depth of happiness that fills your soul when you can follow that path is truly amazing. So any advice for executives, for leaders out there in finding and leveraging what we call catalysts, innovators, entrepreneurs, these folks that you're interviewing for?
So I think one of the things is like to actually be on the lookout for people with a flexibility, or like you can also call it entrepreneurial mindset, right? So people who are like really, in the midst of, it doesn't actually matter like what the actual title is or what the actual role is, but like people who show like, they take accountability, like they don't take no for an answer, they are committed to actually creating the change, like things like that, like it's more behavioral trait. And then so that's kind of identifying them first. The second thing is to actually try and test them in different circumstances, because a lot of times, like, they may be able to maneuver the organization themselves, but like sometimes that's a skill that they might be lacking. And like trying to enable them and give them, enough space where they can actually showcase, like, can they actually do something, can they create change, and like having this environment for them to keep on learning and growing, I think is important. And then ideally even like try to think about like what are the priorities of the organization where you want to put those people on, or is there a systematic way of how does the organization actually value this? Because I think a lot of times what large scale organizations value is like what you've always valued, is like its experience, its years that you've been with the organization. It's like doing certain things that, where you earn like the right to be like a senior executive or a manager. And I just think there is a specific value for, creating something that's new, creating something that's actually redefining what the future is, where it's not about carrying out tasks according to protocol or procedures. You actually have to question yourself constantly, and have that mindset of like, if the rules are not well made for solving the problem, then you have to rethink, okay, how do we make it happen, and not just blindly follow the rules.
So you have just so deeply answered the question I had of what is it that makes Bernhard both able to build the best workplace for innovators and be the best innovative leader of the year? Yes. Not only do you embody it, but you are creating it for others like you.
Well, I have to say, like, we are trying our best to do this. Like, and I think like the ability to actually, and I'm really grateful and thankful also for all our, donors and partners who are actually supporting our mission and like donate to us, like, money, but like also like, like providing us with services for free to actually do this, where like, I think it's still to a certain extent a unique concept to try this kind of like startup innovation work, like in the same mindset venture capital does. Like say, we're investing a little bit in like that small seed, one day might become like that one big idea that's transforming the way and like lifting people out of hunger. And like this kind of mindset, like it takes risk appetite, but like I'm often telling people, like, when people come to me, is like, if you're a venture investor, like, why do you take risks in your daily basis, but then, with philanthropy or like donations, why don't you have the same mindset? You can invest a little, and that little can actually have big impact, right?
I love it. All the ways that you are helping us innovate. All right, getting a little bit real, Bernhard, what is the worst thing about being a catalyst or an innovator?
Well, I guess like sometimes you are, and I don't know if I am, but I guess I am. But like it's for me, this is where like you need to have an unrealistic ability to see the positive in the world and keep on pushing despite a lot of other people, like, and there's lots of obstacles, and like you are not faced by like this thing and that is hard. Now, that can be like, that's probably also negative at times because it may have a toll on you and like also others that you're working with, because like this kind of like ability to see things positively, the flip side of that is like, you know, you're on a very, very hard path at times, but it's also something that's, you know, it's very worthwhile to do.
Agreed. There's a weight, right, that can follow you that sometimes you're not paying attention to in that positive vision, that you're like, oh, yeah, that's there.
Yeah, no, and like I think it's real that like, you know, like the podcast title is, you know, to burn out. Like I think you do need to actually be aware, specifically when you're in leadership positions, like, okay, how do you yourself lead yourself, but also the team, because it's easy to like be jumping into like action and do that all the time, but at the same time, like you also need to manage your energy somehow and like make sure that what you're doing there, you know, creates a long-term impact, not just for you, but specifically also when you have a team.
Yeah. So what's the best part of being a catalyst?
Well, I would say it's very rewarding, like if that's what you're into, right? Like, so like this is where, I mean, for me, like with our World Food Program Innovation Accelerator, like knowing that the startups in innovation literally positively impact the lives of 9 million people last year is very rewarding. And like some of these things you could argue, well, that may have happened later, but some of those startups or innovations would have never happened without us. And I think the fact that you can create so much impact on the planet through doing this, and it could be relevant for any entrepreneur, right? Like you could actually just make things more sustainable. You can actually like be more inclusive, build products that are for like maybe some more vulnerable groups. You know, there's no reason why you can't do this. Now, it's just like, I can only encourage people, like there's lots of like things that you're getting back from that also. Like you're gonna meet more people that will say, well, I never knew how I can do this. And all of a sudden you show the way.
That's pretty powerful. 9 million people, like it's a very tangible output, and to know that that's stretching across the world. As we wrap up today, Bernhard, any call to action for our listeners?
So one thing maybe, and it's some people may know this or may not know this. So I actually co-founded an app called Share the Meal. And the idea of that, like with my co-founder, was very simple. It's like, it literally costs 80 cents to feed a child for a full day for the World Food Program. And like the basic idea was like, let's imagine there's a button on your smartphone and you tap it and then you just share your meal with a child in need. And that's what Share the Meal does. There's over 150 million shared meals already. So it's about $120 million. So if somebody wants to, you know, just download Share the Meal and, you know, like 80 cents for you may actually mean not very much, but together with friends and social media, you can share that. And like, it's actually, you can do good. Like, you know, 150 million shared meals by 9 million people. It's really, you know, an amazing outcome. The other idea, and like, if people are looking for inspiration, they can go on our website. It's innovation.wfp.org, where they actually check out like some of the startups, some of the scaling innovations where, you know, maybe you want to get into, like, if you're a startup founder, your next startup could be impact focused, you know, wherever you are right now or in a developing country. And of course, we're always looking for more supporters. So reach out if you're wanting to support a social impact mission with innovation and technology.
Bernhard, I'm just so inspired. We have a family gratitude practice at dinner every night, but I'm going to add that to our gratitude practice to sort of like recognize, like, look, we can share a meal every time that we're grateful for the meal that we're having together. So thank you for that amazing gift.
Well, thank you. No, look, this is exactly the spirit also, whereas like, I think a lot of times, like, how can we have this positive change, right? Like we are feeling, we are grateful for what we have. Like, how can we also share this, right?
Yeah. It's such a meaningful and easy way for people to engage. And I hear that throughout your story. Your mission has been to blaze this path to make it easy for other people to follow behind and create impact, which is such a powerful gift to the world. And I hope that our listeners got some good, juicy nuggets to take away with them. Bernhard, thank you so much for being here. We cannot wait to continue to watch the amazing impact and hopefully contribute in our own small way.
Thanks so much, Shannon and Tracy. It's been a great pleasure to be here.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to accelerate positive change, go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shift, Burn Out. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.
Thank you.